If you really ride with the Chargers, buckle up because what's happening right now involves the draft, heavy trade buzz, the future of this offense, and decisions that could change the course of the season. Today's talk is straight up, fired up, and no filler. 4 stories that say a whole lot about just how ambitious this team wants to be in 2026. So hit that like button and stay with me to the end because Los Angeles cannot afford to miss right now. Now let's get into a situation that could shape the entire direction of this Chargers draft. Because when a team heads into the final stretch of April with only 5 picks in its pocket, every move starts feeling like a street fight. And that's exactly why this possible Gabe Jacas connection is getting so much attention. This is not just about grabbing another edge defender. This is about attacking a problem before it turns into a full-blown fire. Los Angeles lost Odafe Oweh in free agency. Khalil Mack is still the standard, still respected, still feared. But this team cannot move like that spot is locked down forever. It isn't. Smart franchises do not wait for the hole to open up before they start scrambling. What makes this even more interesting is that people plugged into the draft world already see edge rusher as a real priority for the Chargers, even with all the noise around the offensive line. And that's where Jacas comes in, a name that fits what this defense wants to be. This is not some light pass rusher who only shows up on 3rd down hoping to fly around the corner untouched. No, he brings power, discipline against the run, violent hands, and the kind of physical presence that matches the brand Los Angeles wants to keep building. In a defense like this, an edge does not live off sacks alone. He has to hold the point, close space, react fast, and punch people in the mouth. Jacas plays that kind of football. And there's one more detail that really stands out to me: the quiet connection this whole process is building. That private visit shows real interest, especially because he wasn't 100% healthy at his pro day, and that naturally pushes teams to take a closer look. On top of that, him meeting Khalil Mack during the visit only adds to the feeling that there could be a near-perfect bridge between present and future here. A monster veteran on one side, a physical and productive prospect on the other, with a chance to learn early and step into a useful rotation without having the entire world dumped on his shoulders on day one. If the Chargers come out of this draft with a player like that, it won't be a luxury pick. It'll be vision. It'll be preparation. It'll be a loud message that this front office understands exactly where this roster has to get stronger if it wants to keep competing at a high level. And now here comes the kind of rumor that lights up a fan base and demands cold-blooded analysis at the exact same time. Because the name is massive. The impact would be instant. But the fit with the Chargers' reality is nowhere near as simple as it sounds. TJ Watt to the Chargers feels like the kind of headline built for a team desperate to stack stars and sell an all-in fantasy at any cost. But that has not been how Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh have moved. Not even close. When this franchise makes a trade, it strikes with calculation, not emotion. That's how they've handled moves in the past, getting help without burning premium assets and without mortgaging the future for a flashy emotional swing. And that matters even more right now. The Chargers are already heading into this draft with only 5 picks. 5. That alone should force the front office to think twice before making any aggressive move. Then you look at the possibility of paying a huge price for a 31-year-old pass rusher with a monster contract through 2028 and natural wear starting to show, and suddenly the math gets ugly in a hurry. Because this is not just about acquiring the name TJ Watt, it's about absorbing major cost, giving up precious draft capital, and doing all of it at a moment when the team still has to balance the present with long-term roster building. And here's another thing people ignore when they get hypnotized by a huge name. The Chargers' edge room is not in panic mode. Khalil Mack is back for at least one more season. Tuli Tuipolo II is rising and already showed real production. Kyle Kennard is still a developmental bet they believe can grow. So we are not talking about a position so broken that it justifies a desperate swing. We're talking about a room that can absolutely use more talent, but within a plan built on continuity, not total chaos. That's why, honestly, I see this rumor as more off-season fantasy than real path for Los Angeles. Sure, if a player of that caliber somehow becomes available, you do your homework, you listen, you check the price. But turning that into a real pursuit is a completely different story. And in the Chargers' case, that gap has a name: discipline. This front office did not build its identity just to jump into an auction for the expensive leftovers of another team's prime. If help is coming off the edge, the most likely road is still the draft, with control, youth, and long-term vision. And to be real, that's exactly how it should be. Now the conversation gets even more tense because very few situations say more about the Chargers' offense right now than this Quentin Johnston crossroads. And I'm going to keep it real, just like the fan base likes it. Forcing it just to force it could turn into a very expensive mistake. The physical talent has always been there, the first-round status still hangs over everything, and obviously there are people inside the building who still want to believe this fit can finally click for real. But the NFL does not reward attachment. The NFL rewards fast reads, hard decisions, and the courage to make a move before the problem gets more expensive than it already is. When his name starts popping up in trade rumors, that tells you there's already smoke around the situation. And if other teams sense that Los Angeles could be open to moving him, his trade value does not go up, it drops. That is the kind of detail that muddies everything because the Chargers could end up trapped in the worst kind of middle ground, not getting ideal value in a deal, while also not having real confidence that he deserves to keep taking up meaningful space in an offense that's trying to become something different under Mike McDaniel. And to me, that is the heaviest part of all of this. Because if the new offensive coordinator wants a more dynamic, more precise attack with receivers who can process, separate, and execute consistently, then every piece has to fit the blueprint. You cannot live off random flashes and hope the rest works itself out by sheer force. Johnston had touchdown production, he had useful moments, but the bigger picture and the feeling on the field still leave that giant question mark hanging in the air. And when that doubt is still alive at this stage, the conversation about his future stops being an overreaction and starts becoming a necessity. Then there's the fifth-year option decision coming up, and that cranks the pressure up even more. Because keeping a player in this situation without full conviction could mean committing money and snaps to a piece that may never become what the team hoped for when they made the pick. So honestly, if the Chargers believe he does not truly fit what McDaniel wants to build, the hardest move, and maybe the smartest one, is to accept a return that falls short of the dream and move on. I'm your avatar host here on the channel, and now I want to hear from the real Chargers fans. Would you still bet on Quentin Johnston, or would you trade him before this whole thing gets even uglier? Drop it in the comments. And now we get to the loudest, flashiest, most explosive possibility in this whole lineup. The idea of the Chargers making a run at A.J. Brown. And let me say it the way this topic deserves to be said. This would not be some small roster tweak. This would be a cannon blast across the market. This would be the kind of move that changes the weight of Justin Herbert's offense in one shot. When that trade idea pops up, sending pick 22 and Quentin Johnston for Brown plus a future pick, the first reaction from the fan base is obvious. How do you not stop and picture it? Because on the field, the fit is easy to see. A.J. Brown is the kind of receiver who bends the geometry of a defense. He wins on in-breaking routes with power, explodes after the catch, absorbs contact, wins physical battles, and forces every defensive coordinator to redraw the map. In a Mike McDaniel offense, that opens up a ridiculous amount of possibilities. If the goal is to speed up the attack, create smarter separation, generate more yards after the catch, and give Herbert a constant feeling of danger at every level of the field, Brown belongs in that conversation as a premium piece. Not a luxury. A full-blown engine. And once you pair that name with Lad McConkey, the picture gets even scarier for defenses. McConkey already brings route polish, intelligence, and natural chemistry with the quarterback. Brown would bring brutality, physical presence, and explosion. One stretches a defense with timing and precision, the other puts fear into people with contact and damage after the catch. That would not just be another nice duo. That could push the Chargers into the conversation with offenses that are a weekly nightmare to deal with. Now let's be honest, like fans who follow this team every single day. The cost hurts. Giving up pick 22 in a draft where the Chargers are already not exactly swimming in capital takes serious guts. And there's also the question of where Brown really is right now. He is still a major name, still a respected receiver, but the trade only makes sense if the coaching staff believes he can still get back to operating at the most destructive level of the game. Because if the franchise pays that price, it is not paying for a good player. It is paying for real difference-making impact. Even so, I'm going to say something a lot of people might hesitate to say out loud. This kind of bold move is exactly what separates a competitive team from a team that starts making the whole league nervous. If McDaniel really wants to transform the offensive identity of the Chargers, then changing the pieces may be unavoidable. And in that kind of scenario, A.J. Brown would not just be a reinforcement. He would be a declaration of war. At the end of the day, the message from these four stories is simple. The Chargers are staring at a stretch of weeks that could redefine the real weight of this team in 2026. There's a draft that demands precision, a rumor that tests the discipline of the franchise, a delicate decision in the wide receiver room, and a possible offensive move big enough to shake the whole picture. None of this is small. Every bit of it touches identity, ambition, and just how much this roster can really grow around Justin Herbert. I'm your avatar host, and if you live Chargers football every day, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell, because the most important stretch of the offseason is just getting started, and we're going to ride through every move together.